This week in marketing, we're going to be looking at the environment in which businesses operate and, of course, in which marketing takes place. So by the end of this week, you should be able to describe the various environmental forces that affect a company's ability to serve its customers. So in doing that, we're going to be looking at the whole range of environmental forces, including demographic, economic environments, also the natural and technological environment, and political and cultural environments. But this week, we're going to start by introducing the topic. By the end of this video, we want to understand what we mean by the marketing environment, why it's important to businesses, and what the difference is between the micro environment for marketing and the macro environment. But I want to stop by thinking about an example to illustrate this idea of the importance of the marketing environment. So I want to start by thinking about Microsoft. Microsoft obviously is one of the biggest technological companies in the world, and it operates in a market that changes very fast, that digital market. So it has to constantly adapt to that fast changing market. Sometimes I think Microsoft does that very well. Other times it does it perhaps not so well. So think about the Windows, which is Microsoft's biggest product. Windows is a product that has kept Microsoft going over the years. We call that a cash cow in marketing. It has increased Microsoft's revenues, it's increased its profits, and it's increased its stock price. However, following the millennium, PC sales decreased in their growth. People began to look for mobile digital devices. And that means that consumers moved away to some extent from buying Windows for their PCs because mobile technology often doesn't use Windows. So we had this transformation of new products, new services, and so on. And let's have a look at the effect that that had on the market share of Windows. So if we have a look at this graph on the left-hand side, we see that the blue line shows us Windows market share. And by market share, what we mean is the percentage of sales in this particular market that went to Microsoft Windows. So back in 2012, when we think about the market for operating systems, and this is a global marketplace, Windows had over 80% of that market. In other words, over 80% of sales of operating systems were Windows. But what happened after 2012 is we see that that market share gradually declined. And when we get to 2017, which is as far as this graph goes, when we get to 2017, Windows market share of the operating systems market had fallen to below 40%. So what had happened to it? Well, we can see the answer if we look at the other lines, because this green line here shows the market share for Android operating systems. And I think we all know that Android is a mobile operating system. So Android sales went from having almost zero market share in 2012. And again, if we come back up to 2017, the market share of Android is now equal to that of Windows, more or less. In fact, slightly overtaken. And at the same time, we see the market share of iOS, that's the Apple, the iPhone operating system has also grown, as has OS X. So what we're seeing here is a change from static computers that almost all use Windows as an operating system to mobile devices that used different operating systems. So the impact of that on Microsoft is that they got left behind. Sales of Windows as an operating system are still strong, but not nearly as strong as they were. And Microsoft hasn't been the company who has provided the new operating systems that are used on mobile devices. This is a different way of looking at the same thing. What we have here is market share of operating systems in different parts of the world. And what we see from this is that in different parts of the world, different operating systems have dominance. So all the blue color shows us Windows operating system. So this is where Windows is the market leader. This was in 2017. So in 2017, Windows was still the market leader in Europe, large parts of Asia, and the Americas and Australia. However, mobile operating systems, and in particular Android, was the market leader in most of Africa and most of Southeast Asia. And that trend is growing. The use of mobile devices is growing, and with it the market share. So what this tells us is even a company as powerful as Microsoft has to be very aware of its changing environment if it wants to maintain sales and revenue and profit. Failure to do so will mean that it loses market share and therefore profits will not stand up. So that's one example of one business and how it's been affected by changes in the marketing environment. And in the case we just talked about, we were really thinking about changes in the technological environment, that big new impact of mobile devices compared to desktop devices. So when we talk about marketing environment, this is what we mean. We mean outside forces that affect businesses' ability to maintain and build successful relationships with their target customers. In other words, if we think back to Microsoft, that relationship with its target customers changed a bit, didn't it? Because the customers moved to mobile and they no longer wanted Microsoft's Windows product. So when we think about the marketing environment, we think about it in two ways. The micro environment, these are changes in the environment which are close to the company. Maybe changes even within the company, but also changes amongst competitors and things like that. We're also going to look at the macro environment. And by macro environment, macro means large. So these are larger societal forces that affect the environment and even the micro environment in which the business operates. So those are the two aspects that we're going to be looking at. So when we think about forces in the micro environment, remember we said these are things close to the business. We think about these different things. So marketing in a business exists within the company that it serves, but that business will also have suppliers. It will have intermediaries that help it get the product to market. Of course, there will be competition. There will be customers and local publics. So those are the microenvironment factors, and those can all change and affect the way the business needs to operate. We can look at that in a slightly different way. And you may remember this, you may have looked at this last semester. This model is Porter's 5 forces, where we're looking at the same sort of thing, but in a slightly different way. So Porter said that there were 5 forces in the microenvironment which businesses need to be very aware of. 1, rivalry amongst existing competitors. And with that comes the threat of substitutes. And as Microsoft found, Android was a substitute for Windows. There is a threat of new entrants into the market, and businesses in their marketing also have to think about their suppliers and how powerful they are. And of course, the buyers and what the buyers want and how powerful they are. So this is using a model like Porter's 5 forces to look at the microenvironment. And this is a slightly different way of looking at it, but we're talking about the same thing. When we come to think about macro environments, again, we can look at this in 2 different ways. So again, we can look at the company, which is affected by all of these different things. And same thing really, but perhaps using language that's more familiar to you, which is a Peddle analysis. And again, you looked at this in semester 1. So with a Peddle analysis, this is a tool that helps businesses to analyze its wider environment. So what's happening in the economy and how is that going to affect our marketing? Are there any trends in society that will affect our marketing? Changes in technology, changes to the law? What about environmental forces? Are people becoming keener to buy products that are environmentally friendly, for example? Will that affect our marketing? And of course, there are political things going on all of the time. So, for example, the UK has recently left the European Union, and that has been a political force that has definitely affected the marketing of many UK and European businesses. So we're going to be studying each of these in a little more detail this week. But right now, I want to show you a short video that really brings to the fore this idea that we live in a changing world and that businesses, if they are to succeed, need to keep abreast of these changes and change with them. So even though that video was a little bit out of date, I think it conveys to us a sense of just how much the world is changing and just how quickly that is happening. And we all have to respond to that, but none less than marketing departments, because the success of businesses depends on the products they choose to market and how they choose to market them. So we're going to finish there for this video. In the next video, we're going to be looking at different aspects of the marketing environment in a little bit more detail. But for now, there are some questions for you to answer.